And just to tell people, a lot of people wrestling, oh yeah, I like to refer to it as ballet with violence because it's choreographed, but you're a great athlete. Nobody's going to say Nureyev isn't a great athlete and everything he does is choreographed. But what I say is the life itself. There's guys that worked way more than me. My record, I wrestled one time 63 consecutive nights in a row.
Wow.
Without a day off. 63 nights in a row.
And that's driving from town to town in between those nights.
Well, and coming home and all that. But imagine the pain in your body. Imagine every night. The thing you're lucky for is you're 26. Your bodies can go through a tremendous amount of abuse.
Yeah.
But I was doing cannabis back then, and a lot of wrestlers were. Doing it for both the pain as well as sleeping at night and everything that cannabis can bring to the table. But were there opiates? I guess, you would know as much as I know on that. I don't know if there was or not. I can only assume there were because of all the deaths.
Yeah.
That took place.
I would imagine.
Was that opiates or steroids?
Well, I think it's definitely a combination of things. I look back to just a number of guys, and you look at who I always felt was the best wrestler, particularly during that era, Bret Hart, and all of the family members that he has lost and friends that he has lost over the years, and about the guys that were obviously abusing, PEDs and all of those things. But I would be curious to how many, like yourself, were using cannabis as a means to deal with the wear and tear that comes with being on the road 300 some odd days a year.
A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all I'll say. I won't say any names. I'll just say a lot.
and now we're in a position because of the significance of what this represents. The fact that state by state, we have two major ballot initiatives that are going on in this state in November. One is reproductive freedom.
I might get my reproductive autonomy back. Isn't that exciting?
Yeah. And then, of course,
thank goodness.
Yes. Yeah. And then cannabis is obviously a big one. Mm-hmm. And I think that, state to state, that is ultimately how it's going to happen because, DC can't do anything or they don't care to do anything.
No.
But if we do take our states' rights, we can get where we need to be because cannabis should be legal.
Most people support. We need to get 60% here because I live in the state where people were stupid enough to vote away their rights 10 years ago or so. And they actually said yes to an amendment to decrease our power. So now we need 60%. Yes, that passed. Yes, it did. And most people just go, oh, yes, and they write it confusing and all that. So now we need 60%. But
and they also write it that it's for your best good and safety.
It's a lot of double negative.
People hear that thing about, oh, well, if it's for my safety, then, oh, yeah, I'll support this.
It's not good.
Well, you've always said there's like a psychological component to it.
Most people vote yes on amendments.
And they always vote for the first name.
They vote for the first name. Yeah, it's true. Most people vote yes on amendments anyway, and people know that. But because we need 60%, I'm confident about it for my lady freedoms. I'm not necessarily as confident about it for the recreational cannabis. I'd like that, but I don't. We'll see.
Yeah, I really hope Florida. For all the people out there listening to them in Florida, it's so important because the amount of job creation and money and growth that it brings into the state. Florida's a huge tourist state. And if you can bring in more tourists because they can go there and legally and safely smoke up while they go to Disney World, awesome.
Is the problem in Florida that they place cannabis with books?
Well, that could be.
Is that the problem down there? Is that cannabis is getting lumped in with books?
Well, one of our counties actually banned a dictionary. They banned the Merriam-Webster dictionary in one of the Panhandle counties.
This is also one of the big contrasting differences between a state like Minnesota. I've always said, if you really want to know just how much of an independent streak a state like Minnesota really has, you're the one state that did not vote for Reagan in '84 when you're talking about the most popular reelected president in the modern era, and yet Minnesota said no,
thank you.
We're not doing it. and they elected you as governor as an independent. Again, something that isn't common. So what is it about Minnesota that makes you guys such a unique state in the union?
By the way, it's the first place I'm going.
Part of it's this, I think. Part of it's this. You know how in America, if you say the word socialism, there's a panic?
Right.
Right? If you even mention the word socialism, oh my God, not socialism. We'll do anything. No socialism. Well, Minnesota's a little bit different on that in the fact of where Minnesotans come from.
I was going
You have to look at the Minnesota, who migrated to Minnesota, Swedes and Norwegians, and those from the upper part of Europe over there, the northern circle, the Arctic Circle of Europe. Those are most of your immigrants, as well as, Germans. I happen to be German Slovak, but we have a great deal of Norwegians, a great deal of Swedes. And if you look at both of those countries, they're both very socialistic countries where they provide education for the masses. They provide universal health care for everybody. They do things on a socialist level, and they don't have this built-in fear of socialism like we here in the U.S. do. And I'll finish with this. How come we're so afraid of anything socialistic when it's socialism that protects our very capitalism?
Right.
And what I mean by that is the U.S. military. That is complete, unadulterated socialism. And yet everybody thanks you for your socialistic service, right? Thank you for your socialistic service. They don't add that socialist in there, but they say thank you for your service. And they don't realize the military is complete socialism, top to bottom.
Yeah.
But there's your answer, I think, on Minnesota. We have such deep roots to Norway and Sweden and the part of Europe where socialism is not looked at as negatively as it is in other parts of the country.
Well, also, too, I'll add on to that, too, is I think that the fun thing about Minnesota is that we, as a whole, and now we have an amazing Somali population that's immigrated here as well, and they are incredible. I mean, that's one of the beautiful things about Minnesota is it kind of gets a bad rap of thinking everyone thinks, oh, it's just frozen tundra Vikings up here, but actually it's a really amazing, like since moving back 2 years ago, it's a really amazing state. And I think that one of the things, we're very independent minded. I think we're even when you look at the artists that come out of Minnesota, from Prince to Bob Dylan to the Coen brothers to Terry Gilliam, you have a really interesting dynamic group of individuals that kind of come out of Minnesota, because I think that there's a strong independent streak here. And with that independent streak, there's also a strong sense of community and wanting to take care of your brothers and sisters. That doesn't mean we don't have our problems. It doesn't mean that we don't have our issues here with racism and things of that nature. But I think at the very core of Minnesota is a very, very strong, both independent streak meshed with a beautiful love of community. And you probably get that when you got to spend 6 months out of the year freezing your ass off, and you're trapped indoors and you got to rely on your neighbor for wood and shelter. It creates that element. But no, and I think that's where it comes from. But I got to say again to the citizens of Florida, take your freedom in your own hand. I mean, voting for cannabis, voting for reproductive rights, that's your freedoms that you're voting on. Like, don't give those up. Don't allow politicians to decide what is freedom.
Freedoms are very difficult to get back once you've surrendered them.